what is manifestation? How does it actually work?
So the best way that I can answer that question, it's kind of because there's so many different ways to look at it, and there's so many different points of view from what you might call like a human sense of self perspective, that you have to ask who is asking the question. If you ask who's asking the question that you just asked, then you can get a lot more clarity into what the word and the label represents or means as far as like a person's journey of going from a person back to the source. That makes sense. So to say who is asking what is manifestation is from the point of view of a person who believes that there's a thing called manifestation that the person can use to bring things it wants to itself. And in that sense, in the moment, as you're identifying yourself as something separate from the source that is constantly manifesting and unfolding in every moment. So just to simply ask the question, how do I manifest something? We're missing it automatically. And there's a part of like the spiritual journey where you, and I say spiritual, and I'll use air quotes heavily there, because there's a lot of weight or baggage, if you will, around the term itself, around the term, any term that's used inside of the new age spirituality aspect of what you might call a higher conscious living or perspective or kind of flowing with life. There's a lot of baggage. So if you say a word like manifestation, if you say a word like God, if you say a word, like self or spirituality, there's a lot of baggage attached. So when you think about a word that has baggage, that means that everyone who's listening has a preconceived idea of what that means for them. And it's all going to be different, right? So it's twice removed from what reality is. You have what's actually happening, which is what we're going to talk about today, I have no doubt, like what's actually happening. And then you can't stop it from happening. It's happening. Not something you have to do, something that's happening. And then you have the word that is a representation of what's actually happening. And then you have the meaning people give the word, and that's subjective. For each 7-8 billion people are listening to this podcast, they each have a different idea, even though there might be, like we talked about in the pre-call, a theme. They each have a different idea of what it is, and then a story about it. Oh, manifest, that's bullshit. That's garbage. That doesn't work. Blah blah. Oh, manifest, I've heard about that. I'm gonna try that. Oh, it's amazing. I'm really good at it. Right? Like, oh, I know what it is, but I'm really bad at it. So like it's everyone has their own view. So to ask what it is, you can only go to erase all of the baggage, forget about the meaning of the word, and then dive into like what might be happening inside of what you might call a spiritual journey. I promise you this is going to answer the question. Just I have to take the long way around. I have to take the long way around. So when you have, like, we'll call it paradigm one, a person who is not awake yet, right? Awakening, spiritual awakening, right? Like there's a person who is not awake yet. That's paradigm one, we'll call it. And then you have paradigm two, where now the person they've become awake, right? And there's a bunch of different ways to kind of define what that is. But just to put it simply, in most cases, it's a person who is aware of the story and no longer so much in it or identified with it, meaning like they're like, oh, I have a story and it seems to be my own. It's not just life as it is. And this hectic unfolding of like, traumatic stamps of your body, just reactive, and addictive behavior. Like you're aware of patterns. That's the way I kind of like to explain it. You're aware of patterns. You weren't maybe aware before when you were like addictively texting your ex all of the time, that was your body. That was like a cellular call from your body and your personal mind to get relief in some way. Maybe you weren't aware of that. So maybe it had to create so much chaos in your life manifesting. You weren't aware that you were manifesting anything, but this is what was happening. You were giving your energy and attention to something. You weren't aware that you were coming from a powerless place. You're giving your power to something outside of you. You're trying to seek it and get it and bring you relief, and then it crashes again. Or maybe there's a temporary relief and then it crashes again. So most of us, when we say we're on a spiritual journey, have gone through that crash of that personal person body and mind, the Pat Mahan of it all, seeking outside of itself to get validation or love or acceptance or something from the world. Most of us have gone on that journey for long enough to realize that there's something missing. It's not out there. So when I reference the word spiritual, I'm referencing only because it's the best word we have so far, even with all the baggage, a person's journey from trying to seek satisfaction or love outside of itself. And it begins to no longer want to do that. It knows that it's not going to be another something that does it this time. It knows that it's not going to be the promotion that does it this time. It knows that it's not going to be getting this person back anymore that does it. Like there's something to be looked at, and usually we're diving within, right? You're reading The Power of Now. You're reading The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. You're reading all of these books where people are talking about, the inside world. And what is that? And being introspective and aware of your thoughts and aware of so we're always doing this thing called manifesting, but before I was unconscious as to what I was bringing to my space. So the first part of this, when you're realizing oh, I'm aware of this voice, I'm aware of this body, that pattern creates chaos. And I used to blame that chaos on the world. It was the world's fault. It's your fault. It's everyone's fault but mine, right? Going from victim to hero. So when you're kind of sitting okay, so I'm always bringing things to me, my energy and attention, it's just true. It sounds like woo-woo, but it's not. What you put your attention on, it expands. It brings more of it to you. So in the early part of a spiritual journey, when you're referencing manifestation as a word, it's okay, people want to just bring more. There's this thing that happens, the energetic force of the universe that I can use. It's still separate at this point. I can use this power of the universe, this energy, and I can bring things to me. And they try to bring more stuff to them, not realizing that they're doing the same thing that they were doing from unconscious ego. So it's not, what can I bring to me that will still satisfy me? But now I'm going to use the powers of the universe. It's why am I bringing all this shit to me? Why is this coming? Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep finding myself in the same relationship over and over? The same literal person with a different face. Why do I keep having money issues? Where's my money going? Why can't I bring more? So it's all of these questions referencing why you're bringing what you're bringing to you. And then you dive a little bit deeper and you start to realize the whole point of this part, when I say who is asking, there's this aspect of what you might call what I teach, which is an aspect of self-realization, right? So there's an overall theme. So none of this matters or makes any sense at all until you realize what the theme is. And the theme is that the you that you think you are is not the you that you ultimately are. The you that you think you are is what you might call temporary, for lack of a better word. In order to know what temporary is, you have to know what infinite is, at least as a concept, because we live in a polarizing aspect of reality. We live on Earth, we'll call it, where you have to know what dark is to know what light is. You have to know what up is to reference down. You have to. So you can't. And the fact that you are aware of one means that the other exists, even if you're unaware, or unable to see or feel it. So the people who are in the worst, darkest, lowest places, and they'll call me or talk to me or work with me, and they'll be there is no light. It's impossible. I can only manifest, or I'm only in the darkness. I can't. The fact that they are referencing so powerfully that they understand what the dark is proves, if you're willing, it proves that the light exists. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a frame of reference for why you feel so bad. So the journey I found is the journey of realizing, they call it the veil of forgetfulness, right? The lifting the veil, spiritual awakening, lifting the veil. I believe it was the Greek. I don't remember. It literally, the apocalypse means lifting the veil. It's being aware of what you weren't otherwise aware of, and your life and world will never be the same. That's the apocalypse, right? So the journey is to realize that you think you're a separate self. You think you're a body. You think you're a personal mind, your personal story. Your awareness is on that. And whatever that is or has been developed, that's what your life is right now. You have manifested the life based on your lens of self-perception, and then that degree of whether you believe you are connected to or separate from life around you. That's the literal key to everything. The journey is who do you think you are? What do you think this is? Do you think you're this separate body with a personal mind, and you're I'm separate from you, and I'm separate from life, and everything that happens for me, it's separate. If it works out for me, awesome. That was meant to be. But if it doesn't work out for me, that's bullshit. And that can't mean anything, right? So like, we're constantly judging ourself versus the self, and our body versus our environment. So I believe, and I've found through at least the journey that I've been on so far, is that you are on the path to realize what the truth is for you. And I believe that as far as collectively as humans, that truth is the same.